Good evening, everyone. I call to order the regular meeting of the Victoria City Council. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first item on the agenda tonight is our announcements. The December 28th council meeting will be canceled, making this the last meeting of 2021. The first meeting of the new year will be held on January 10th, 2022. All meetings of the City Council are open to the public and held in the council chambers at City Hall unless otherwise noted. We encourage anyone wanting to attend our council meetings or workshops in person to contact our city clerk in advance. In other announcements, the city, with assistance from the Victoria Senior Advisory Committee, launched the new Senior Resource Guide and Supplemental Webpage. The Senior Resource Guide was created to help Victoria residents maintain the highest quality of life possible by providing information on senior services, educational programming, and other resources that support and promote the well-being of all Victoria residents. To view the guide, please visit the city's website at www.ci.victoria.mn.us. And lastly, on behalf of the City Council and the staff here at the City of Victoria, we wish you and your families a very happy holiday and a good new year. Next up is adopting the final agenda. Council, is there a motion to adopt the final agenda?
Motion to adopt the final agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. We'll move on to our next item, which is our open forum. It's the opportunity for anyone to address the council on an item that is not on the agenda and not in application form that will be coming to the council at a future date. We have one individual who has registered to speak, and that is Ms. Stephanie Alexander with WeCab. Ms. Alexander, we welcome you. Please come to the podium and begin by stating your name and address for the record.
Hello, good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Stephanie Alexander, and my address is 1908 Ford Road, Minnetonka. I don't live here, sorry.
That's okay, you're welcome anyway.
Thank you. So thank you so much for inviting me over to speak tonight. I am the new Executive Director for WeCab. WeCab, oh, I saw a nod. Thank you. You know who that is. WeCab is an organization, we're a nonprofit who provides supplemental transportation to individuals who otherwise can't get it. As most of you may know, public transit is not super robust out in these neighborhoods in Carver County and the West Tonka area, and so that is what we do. So I'm just here tonight to introduce myself as the new Executive Director. I do have some brochures and business cards I can leave for you. I'll bring them over to you. And then I just thought you might be interested in some statistics about WeCab. Our last fiscal year, we had just over 900 registered riders between the two areas. We served over 1,600 one-way rides. We drove more than 23,000 miles, and we have just under 60 volunteers. And so we're looking for more volunteers. If you or someone you know would like to be a volunteer driver or dispatch, we're always looking for more volunteers. But other than that, thank you so much for your time tonight.
And Ms. Alexander, they can contact you if they want to volunteer.
Yes, absolutely.
Terrific.
So that's the brochures and my business cards, and should I give those to you?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Leave those with Ms. Patno. That'd be great.
That's it.
All right, terrific. Well, thank you and welcome. Congratulations on your new
tonight.
position.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to address the council this evening? Seeing no one, we'll now move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are routine, administrative, and don't require deliberation or housekeeping items required by law. They're approved with one vote unless someone requests an item to be considered separately. Ms. Hardy, does staff wish to pull anything from the consent agenda?
None from staff, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Council, anything from council that they wish to pull? And is there anyone in the audience that wishes to pull an item from the consent agenda for separate consideration this evening? Seeing none, I'll take a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
Motion.
We have a motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. We're now moving on to our regular agenda. We have a full agenda this evening, so we'll begin with item 6.1, which is to take public input on our 2022 proposed budget and levy. Presenting this evening is our Finance and HR Director, Tricia Pollock. Ms. Pollock, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. This is the time that is designated for public input on the final 2022 budget, levy, and 5-year CIP. Is there anyone here tonight that has a comment or question about the final 2022 budget and levy?
And we're looking for anyone from the audience that is wishing to speak to the 2022 proposed budget and levy. Now is your opportunity. I'm going to ask one more time just in case you're shy. It doesn't look like it. So, very good. Tricia, carry on, please.
Thank you, Mayor. So tonight is the final meeting for the 2022 budget process. Staff appreciates council support, input, your thoughtful decision making throughout this entire budget season. And detailed budget information has been included in your packet, in the agenda packet. And so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that level of detail, but rather show you the final proposed levy information and the overall results. As you know, the final levy cannot be more than the preliminary levy that was set in September, which was a 5.21% increase over the 2021 levy. Since our max tax levy was adopted, staffs worked diligently to find ways to reduce the levy for 22 and still meet the current service levels and strategic plan priorities. We're pleased to recommend a reduction from the max tax levy and are proposing a final levy $14,000 less than what was adopted at max tax. Instead of a 5.21% increase, we're recommending a 4.99% levy increase over 2021. This increase is less than inflation, which is 6.2% increase from just October 2020 to October 2021. It's the highest rate of inflation that we've seen since November of 1990. Additionally, the 2022 tax capacity rate is going down compared to 2021 to 30.34%, which is 30.34% of 1% of your home's value. The median home value increased 11.3% from 2021, and the tax on that home will see a 4.5% increase. I'm happy to answer any questions from council before asking for your approval of the 4 resolutions before you this evening. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Tricia. Council, questions for Ms. Pollock or Ms. Hardy this evening?
No, I think they've done an excellent job.
Yeah, we've got about a 20-minute break before we start working on 2023 budget.
Yeah, exactly.
Big, long process. It was thorough, and you guys did good work. I just want to say congratulations on being able to eke that thing down a little bit more. We always like to be able to tell our taxpayers we're going to deliver the same level of services for a little less, so that's always a good thing. Council, last opportunity. With that, then let's entertain a motion.
Are we going to do individual resolutions?
Mayor, members of the council, yes, if you could do individual resolutions, that would be great.
All right, very good.
Start.
Councilmember,
Start.
Councilmember Abear, you're going to start.
No, I'm not doing them all, but I'll do the first one.
No, just do one.
Kick us off. Here we go.
Adopt a resolution approving a final tax levy for the city of Victoria for the collection in 2022.
We have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
We'll give that to Councilmember Gunderson. We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. I will entertain another motion, please.
A motion for a resolution adopting the final 2022 general fund and Victoria Recreation Center fund budgets.
I have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. I will entertain a motion, please.
Resolution adopting the final 2022 water fund, sewer fund, and stormwater fund budgets.
We have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. And the final motion, please.
Motion for a resolution adopting the 2022 through 2026 capital improvement plan.
Thank you. We have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Very good. Moving on to item 6.2, the 2022 final tax levy and budget and a 5-year capital improvement plan.
That was,
That was all of
yeah,
that.
the kind of.
That was the
finals.
whole thing.
Yep,
We just went through.
yep, two items.
Okay. The fee schedule is next. Very good. Next item, 6.3, a public hearing for the 2022 fee schedule. Presenting this evening is the Assistant to the City Manager, Alyssa Swanson. Ms. Swanson, please.
Thank you, Mayor. 1 second while I get the presentation up.
Sure.
There we are. So tonight we are here to consider the adoption of the 2022 proposed fee schedule. Annually, the City Council adopts an ordinance establishing the upcoming year's fee schedule. As it is an ordinance, we are required to conduct a public hearing, which we'll also be doing tonight, as well as asking for the 2 motions that were included in the packet, but also will be brought up on the screen shortly. Now, the fee schedule is a year-long process for the city, starting with city staff conducting a deep dive analysis of city fees and proposing any changes. The deep dive that staff conducts utilizes the 4 adjustment criteria that can be on the screen. The first is market comparisons, or fees set as compared to our market cities and best practice. The second is fees set by external sources, such as state legislation, as well as alignments with the International Building Code. We also do cost recovery, or fees set by the cost of doing business. A great example of this would be a fee established for a permit that you would apply to build a fence or build a swimming pool. And then the last is utility fees, which is based on rate studies that are conducted every several years. The last one was conducted in 2020. Now, after the staff conducts their analysis, they propose changes at the City Council budgetary workshops. Specifically in 2021, Council, you heard the fee changes at the July 26th Council workshop. After receiving Council direction from that meeting, staff compiles the fees into a complete year-end fee schedule or year-beginning fee schedule, which again is in the packet with all of the red line changes. And then again, tonight is to conduct a public hearing, and then the notice was published in the December 2nd edition of the Chanhassen Villager. But Mayor, Council, I will stand for any questions before we move to the public hearing.
Council, any questions for Ms. Swanson? It was a good, thorough report.
No, it's fine.
All right, I see no questions. So this is a public hearing for the 2022 fee schedule. And so now I will open the public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to this item? The 2022 fee schedule. Now's your chance. I thought all of you had gathered to talk about the fees. But no. All right. Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing and open the floor for council to discuss. Anything further from council on this item? All right, seeing nothing, I'll entertain a motion.
Then
Motion
Mayor,
to adopt
Council.
the ordinance 453.
Never mind. I was just going to say the motion was up on the screen, but go ahead, Councilmember Roberts.
Motion to adopt ordinance 453 MC, adopting a revised fee schedule.
I have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. I'll entertain a motion, please.
Motion to approve resolution authorizing ordinance publication by title and summary.
I have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Very good. Thank you so much. Our next item, item 6.4, is the Arboretum Convenience Commercial Development Sketch Plat and Business Subsidy Request. Presenting this evening is Community and Economic Development Director Marty Dahl. We're going to take a minute while we move some things around here. And Mr. Dahl, when you're ready.
All right, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Yes, before you this evening is a sketch plat application for the Arboretum Convenience Project. So just a little bit of background. As part of our sketch plat process, there was a neighborhood meeting that was held on December 1st. Folks within a radius of the property were invited to attend. There were between 20 and 25, I think, people that attended that meeting that evening, and we've had feedback from that meeting summarized in your background packet, and we'll go over it again this evening. Last week on the 7th, the Planning Commission reviewed the sketch plat. Their feedback, or a summary of their feedback, was also included in the packet, and you are obviously reviewing this item this evening. So the property in question, as you can see on your map, is southeast of Highway 5, just across from the Commercial Avenue intersection. This property is currently zoned and guided for low-density residential. So as proposed in this sketch plat, it would require a comprehensive plan amendment to commercial as well as a rezoning to CBD. The proposed use in the sketch plat, there are multiple, includes a combined hometown bank and Mocha Monkey Coffee with drive-throughs. That building is currently proposed to be 2 stories and approximately 4,700 square feet. A Ridgeview Medical Clinic office at 1 story and 8,000 square feet, expandable to 11,000 square feet, as well as a daycare center, which currently does not have a partner as part of the project, at 1 story and 10,000 square feet. This image was also included in your background packet, and we can come back to it as we continue to discuss this item, but this is a rendering of the proposed buildings as well as the site layout. This document was also included in your background. So as was noted in your background packet, there are a few items related to this proposed sketch plat that staff wanted to highlight for the council's discussion and questions. One of them being a proposed roundabout. So as has been noted, the applicant has indicated that their project is not feasible without a full controlled intersection on Highway 5 and Commercial Avenue. They are currently proposing a roundabout and did conduct a traffic impact study related to this potential roundabout that was included in your packet. Staff reviewed that traffic impact study and had a few observations. First, that the intersection currently operates efficiently as it's a single leg intersection to a cul-de-sac dead end with a gas station, Subway, liquor store, and the condominium building, so it doesn't see a lot of traffic currently. This proposed development would result in an estimated 1,024 additional trips. If developed without control at this intersection as proposed, traffic likely would be delayed exiting the site in the current condition, and it likely would create some increases in crashes as folks were trying to find gaps in traffic exiting the site. And then the roundabout does, staff believe, likely operates efficiently as proposed, though it is primarily at this point in time to the benefit of development traffic. So staff has concluded that the roundabout would not be warranted absent development, but with development, there's likely something that needs to happen at that intersection. It will likely also slow mainline traffic, but we probably won't realize that true benefit to slowing mainline traffic until those traffic projections are increased in the next 10 to 20 years. There is also a potential that a roundabout at this location could benefit downtown Victoria, providing a full controlled access, but again, that benefit is likely not realized unless commercial were to eventually be extended through to Quamaclit. And ultimately, while the council may have a opinion or direction, support, or otherwise for a roundabout, MnDOT determines what type of access will or will not be allowed on a given parcel onto a state highway. So a few considerations related to the roundabout is the proposed land use and density acceptable from a transportation perspective, considering the additional trips that will be generated, and does that opinion change depending on whether or not a roundabout would be permitted by MnDOT? Another item of consideration, does a roundabout benefit the city and downtown businesses, residents, and provide an adequate return on investment? If so, is this the correct location for a roundabout, and are the long-term maintenance costs that would likely be associated with it acceptable? Consideration number 3, a roundabout at Commercial Avenue is not contemplated as part of the Arboretum Area Transportation Plan. I'll let Kara speak to that in just a moment. And then how will a roundabout at this location impact traffic and other access points along Highway 5 in downtown? A couple of notes related to that. It's likely that MnDOT would condition 80th Street, the current fire station location, to be reduced to a right-in, right-out only, and MnDOT may also condition other access closures or reductions. Concept level estimates indicate an approximate $1.8 million cost for this roundabout. Staff believes that number would likely be higher than that just based on soils and wetlands along Highway 5 and some of the other improvements that have been made in the past and the issues that were discovered, as well as required state standards for construction. And the applicant has indicated they're seeking funding from the city along with the state, county, and other sources for construction, but have not indicated at this point to what extent. MnDOT has indicated that they have no funding available for this project. And Kara, if you want to talk a little bit about the Arboretum Area Transportation Plan.
Sure. Mayor, members of the City Council, Marty's just going to pull up the story map from the Arboretum Area Transportation Plan. I just want to take a couple of minutes to kind of walk through why the plan is what the plan is in this area. And in terms of really all of the access management through downtown Victoria, Victoria was taking a lead in indicating what we wanted to see there. So the city was a driving force behind the fact that there's a full access intersection proposed at 80th Street. And the two main reasons behind that is the city's 2016 adopted downtown master plan contemplated whether commercial would come through to its existing connection point or whether Quamaclit Tower Boulevard would get extended and connect to be across from 80th Street. So that was contemplated really back not only in the 2016 downtown master plan, but the master plans that occurred before it also was evaluating, does commercial go through, does tower go through? At the time, that's all being kind of reviewed in the context of this fire station remaining here forever. So the notion that you would want a full access intersection across from the fire station, because the fire station wouldn't want to be limited to a right-in, right-out. In the long-term plan, Highway 5 is planned to be 4-lane divided with a median. So you're seeing this median in green here that carries all the way through. And you're seeing access for businesses being closed with the intention that it's being rerouted to other connection points to provide access to it. I would just note that all of this is really long-range planning. It was envisioned in that 2030, 2040 type time period. So what's happening today is you have, a more immediate proposal in front of you pertaining to this particular parcel that at the time the Arboretum Area Transportation Plan's being developed, it's zoned as single-family residential. So the notion that long-term you would have a right-in, right-out only for this parcel would not be inconsistent with that land use. But now you're being tasked with the land use change that's causing us to revisit it. So the preliminary feedback we did get from MnDOT is likely that if we were to locate a roundabout in this location, this obviously in that plan, towers coming through to commercial, and there isn't a connection here, it's likely they would require this to be right in, right out only. And, we still have the median challenge where they're long range still having a median through here that we would want to have to work with these business owners to see how access would occur. But again, in the Arboretum Area Transportation Plan timing, this was a 2030 to 2040 time frame before the road was going to be widened to 4 lanes. So it wasn't something that we were having to really evaluate tomorrow because we weren't going to be building the 4-lane immediately. So if the city decides that the city would like this to be the full access intersection location that we're working towards, the city's going to need to take some leadership in making that change with both MnDOT and the project partners. So we'll have to be saying the city's decided that we would prefer this to be the full access intersection. We understand that that's likely going to result in a long-term right-in, right-out here that not only affects the fire station, but of course, the residents who live back in this area. Now, conceivably with a roundabout, you could go, right out and then circle around the roundabout. It's not that far away to go back the other direction. And of course, residents might not care for that, but it's not as big of an issue for the fire station. But the new information we have today is if the fire station is leaving, then maybe the council will deem that acceptable. But really, the city would need to make the decision that we want to see this roundabout, and the city would need to be the driver in working with the project partners to revise our priorities. So right now, we're looking at funding applications with the county for the intersection of 5 and 11 by the Dairy Queen as a possible roundabout, Marsh Lake Road and Highway 11 as another possible roundabout. Bavaria and 82nd Street is planned for a roundabout. Now, if that gets the state bonding funding, that does include the roundabout. But if we don't get that funding, there's other pots of money that we could apply for. So certainly projects of this nature are expensive. It's not uncommon to pursue outside funding for it. But the city would need to decide that, we need to shift our priorities to have this be what we want our partners working with us on. Is that everything, Marty?
I think so.
Okay.
Thank you. Let me get back to my presentation here. So moving on then from the roundabout, another item of consideration is the proposed site layout. This is what we'd be typically focusing on during sketch plat if we're not talking about some of these other larger items that need to be addressed. But staff did review the site layout, the roads, drive-throughs, stacking, parking, etc. And staff believes that it could function adequately. We worked with with Sean and the architect team here to try and find a better way to get vehicles to stack away farther from where that roundabout entrance would be in. So we do believe that it could function adequately as it's presented with some minor revisions. Staff also does believe that the parking that's being shown is likely adequate. So our standard parking minimums for these types of uses would be 121 spaces. As you may recall, if zone CBD, it does allow the council the authority to reduce those requirements by up to 50%. That's really more so meant to take advantage of shared parking, which obviously this site would be a little bit independent from the rest of the downtown. So staff doesn't believe that a 50% reduction in parking is likely a feasible outcome, but there is likely to be some shared parking within the site itself. So as proposed, there is currently 105 spaces. Again, and I'm sure the development team will speak to it as part of their presentation. They've talked about there's potentially some opportunities to add more parking if it's deemed that we would like to see more parking there. But one of the items for the council to take under consideration is there are some requests for concessions to the CBD design and performance standards that are included in our current city code. One of them, drive-through, is currently listed as a conditional use within the CBD, and it has a list of specific requirements when a drive-through is to be considered. One of them is that no structure, parking area, or driveway except the access driveway shall be located within 100 feet of any portion of a residential district. This parcel is zoned, as I mentioned, currently residential and is surrounded by residentially zoned parcels. There are single-family homes in this southeast area. This is a large wetland complex, but then there are homes farther to the east across the wetland complex. And the fire station is actually technically zoned as a residential district. So as part of that code, there would be a requirement for a 100-foot buffer for the drive-through lanes and buildings. And as you can see, there is a request for concession to be able to allow that to further encroach. In the ordinance, it also requires that each site shall have a frontage of not less than 150 feet on a public street. This is being proposed as a private roadway network. I think less impactful of a concession, that one, as long as it has the appropriate access. And then also requires that parking areas shall have a landscape front yard having a depth of not less than 25 feet and a landscape side yard having a depth of not less than 10 feet or a buffer, which is not currently being proposed. The other requested concession to the CBD design and performance standards is related to setbacks. So with setbacks and buffers, the CBD does not have a buffer requirement between the CBD and any other district. It's actually exempt from a buffer requirement. But we do have a requirement for 0 front yard setbacks per the code. Specifically, it indicates that up to 65% of the length of a front facade is supposed to front the building property line. The idea behind it is the activated street front like we see downtown, and then allowing 35% of that to be set back up to 12 feet for things like entries and outdoor seating and those types of things. So that is another concession that's being requested. So related to site layout, some considerations of the council. Is commercial use desired on this parcel over residential? If so, is this acceptable commercial use? Are the proposed variances from the CBD design and performance standards acceptable? Are the proposed conditional uses? So in addition to drive-through, daycare is also a conditional use within the CBD. It does not have any specific requirements, but is a conditional use. Are they acceptable? And what types of conditions should be applied? Does the site layout appear to function adequately for access, navigation, parking, pedestrians, etc.? And then will there be any impacts of traffic noise, light negatively impacting any of the adjacent residential lots? And if so, are there considerations that should be made for mitigation? And then I think the third piece to highlight as part of this proposal is the proposed land swap and business subsidy. So as was included in your background packet, the applicant is requesting the city to consider a land swap. The request is that the city would swap a parcel in downtown West for a parcel in this development property. The applicant would then use that parcel in downtown West to build a senior housing building, and the intention would be that the city would then deed this property in the current proposed development project to Ridgeview as a business subsidy. The applicant has also indicated some interest in seeking some tax abatement and those types of things, but we have not gotten that far down the process to explore that. So considerations related to the business subsidy land swap. Will the city receive an adequate return on a land swap for a medical facility and any other requested subsidies? Is a medical facility a high enough priority for the community to warrant that level of subsidy, or can the city attract a medical facility absent subsidy? And if subsidy is warranted, is a development parcel within downtown West an equal trade? Just some other considerations that were noted within your background packet that I won't go into a ton of detail on. There are some likely wetland impacts that were noted by the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District's comment letter. We would, as part of our requirements for development in the CBD, require a site plan and building materials review as part of or concurrent with any preliminary plat that would dig further into some of those design and performance standards. The council can consider the uses, and is Victoria currently underserved by these types of uses? What is the appetite to see these types of things go in? And then just a note, the applicant has estimated some real estate and taxes and job creation that they estimate would be created by these uses. That information was also included in your background packet. So the last couple of things before I will turn it over back to the council, and I believe, Mayor, that the applicant also would like to present if that is acceptable. But we did, as I mentioned, receive public feedback. There were numbers of letters of support that were attached to your background packet this evening. In addition to those letters of support, we did hold a neighborhood meeting on December 1st. And just some of the summarized questions that came out of that were, how will the roundabout fit within the existing right-of-way? Has MnDOT reviewed if that roundabout would help traffic in Highway 5? Would the roundabout need to be expanded if Highway 5 is expanded to 4 lanes? How will it impact other business access? There were some concerns with how much traffic the site will generate and how it will impact the other ancillary roadways with traffic and access. Questions, concerns with the amount of peak traffic that the daycare would create and whether parking and circulation within the site is adequate. Requests for landscaping buffers, and then some questions about safety concerns with pedestrians crossing at Highway 5. And then, as I noted, the Planning Commission also did review this item at their meeting last week, just some summarization of the Planning Commission feedback. The Commission was generally supportive of considering a comp plan amendment and rezoning to CBD. There was some concern noted related to commercial use density and traffic versus what it's currently guided in, but the general consensus of the Commission was that they were supportive of exploring that. There was also general support for the proposed site layout as presented. There was a question about whether a daycare is an acceptable use and whether 3 buildings is too many or too dense, and again, some questions related to parking. The Planning Commission did agree that city cost is an important factor in feasibility, not necessarily their purview to discuss, but did acknowledge that that cost should weigh into this. There was a question whether a signal would suffice or be permitted instead of a roundabout. Some questions about the soil conditions and cost impacts for that roundabout. A noted concern about Highway 5 impacts, access impacts for the fire department if that were to change to a right-in, right-out while the fire department was still in that parcel. A question how the development would connect to trail networks, and a question if other sites have been explored. And with that, Mayor and members of the council, that concludes my presentation. As I mentioned, I do believe that the applicant has some things they'd like to present if you'd allow them.
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Dahl. Yes, who's going to speak on behalf of the group? So please approach the podium and state your name for the record.
Good evening. My name is Sean Reborn. I'm with HTG Architects. Thank you, Mayor and council members, for having us tonight. We're very excited about the project and really looking forward to getting some good feedback and seeing how we can make this move forward. Marty, could you pull up the site plan for me, please? So we do have everyone here on the team. We do have representatives from Hometown Bank, Mocha Monkey, Ridgeview, and then also from the development team as well. Greystone Construction is here. So if there's any specific questions that you have for any of the team players, they'll be more than welcome to come up to the podium and help explain any questions you may have. And I just wanted to walk you through the project, kind of the thought process and how we came to where we're at today, and really looking what the direction we can get from the council here and how we can move this forward as a collective. So you're looking at the property, it's about 4 acres, a little bit over 4 acres, and we're looking into subdividing it into 3 parcels. The reasoning for the orientation is we really wanted to generate a good circulation for traffic coming into the development, and also working with staff and engineering about the stacking that Marty had referred to with the 2 drive-ups that we have for both the bank and the coffee. So really our thought process was to circulate the traffic through the daycare, which right now we don't have a specific user, so it's really a high-level layout right now. So we'll get more specific once that user is identified, and I think that's going to be coming up here in the next 30 days. But we wanted to circulate the traffic from west to east. As they did the drop-off, they could circulate right into the coffee drive-up and then would be able to exit the site without a lot of cross-traffic. So really that's the reasoning of the positioning. And then we did have Ridgeview in the middle so that we could do a lot of shared parking between the bank and the medical, just because they will have different peak times and when that traffic is heavier. So there is some thought process through that parking. And then also we really wanted to have the bank and the coffee, the retail, really close to that intersection of the roundabout, just because of the retail presence of the Mocha Monkey, which is pretty prevalent. And if you're very familiar with Waconia, they have the same synergy kind of combination over there off of Highway 10 Angler and in front of Macatoon. So it would be the similar layout. if you've ever been into that building, minus a couple of the other retail, it would just solely be the coffee shop and the bank. Some of the site features, the way it's laid out, if you're aware of the topography of the area, the fire station sits about 16 to 17 feet higher than we'll just call it the gravel access that comes into the property today. So what we're looking to do is create a retaining wall to help hold back some of that earth where the fire station, and there's some underground tanks, I believe, up there, some utility that we need to be aware of, but then it'll create that separation between the neighborhood and the development. So create that kind of buffer, noise, sound barrier that you see a lot on the highways. Right now it's just an arbitrary wall, and then we're looking to take advantage of that facade and put some signage, welcome people as they travel east to west along Highway 5 coming into Victoria. There would also be some signage that the bank and the development is looking at adding into the roundabout. So as travelers come into Victoria, they'll have another sign that's similar to some of the signage and decor you have further into the downtown area. And then also another thing that we're looking at is, as Marty had mentioned, there's wetlands, we'll call it to the northeast, and then there is some of that shallow marsh that kind of impedes onto the development. And a lot of that is dictating how much parking will be allowed to use. And that's the reasoning that the site was pushed further to the west than it is to be able to expand it a little further east, is that wetland. We're still waiting on the specific details and what we can do with that, and working with the watershed will give us a little bit more clarity on how far east we can push to maybe create some more parking. So that's where that parking reduction came down from the 121 that were required, and we're showing 105. Some items that were suggested through the process, which we thought was fantastic, meeting with the neighbors and then also presenting to the Planning Commission last week. Some of the things that came up that I think are going to be looked into to see how we can handle it. The elevation will be a little challenge, but the pedestrians and residential made acknowledgement that, boy, they'd love to have access through foot traffic to the coffee shop, so somehow to get a trail from the top end of the residential down to this development. So we just would have to work through some logistical elevations and how to run that path so that it's ADA compliant, but also possible just through the elevation challenge. Some of the other items that came up was lighting. So we would, if this project was to be able to move forward, was to work with the planning staff and the neighborhood to, obviously, we'd have to have lighting on the development just for security and for access and circulation, but to be very careful and diligent in where we place that lighting so it's not affecting the residential. So that was one of the things that was a good comment that came from the neighborhood meeting. And then also the parking and circulation. I know a lot of the neighbors are nervous about the traffic and the trip generation that'll be generated, but if we can also provide the additional parking that they feel adequate for the site and the circulation within the site, I think we can work with them to come to a common ground on that item as well. And then the roundabout, just a couple features from the traffic study that we had performed that's in your packet. The roundabout benefit, it will help slow down traffic as it comes in from east to west coming into Victoria. So I think that's a plus for the city as well to help reduce a lot of that speed. I know I have traveled on Highway 5 and I would get a little nervous when I need to make a right-hand turn, just looking out my back window to make sure they're watching and not looking at their phone. And then also with the traffic coming into the development in the traffic study, a lot of the traffic that'll be utilizing this site will already be utilizing Highway 5 as their main thoroughfare, and they're just gonna make a quick detour to come in either to do the daycare, grab a cup of coffee, or make an appointment at the clinic. So you're not really adding a lot of additional traffic. It's really traffic already there, and they're just utilizing the development and the retail that's available. Just a couple conclusion things is we're really looking for the council members and mayor, your help to help continue to allow us to work with staff and work through some of the ordinances and the variances that we have to work through with the setback, and then also to propose this development and make sure it moves forward, because I think it'd be a great thing for the city of Victoria, and I know a few of the groups here would like to explain who they are and what they're going to do and how they will operate. Is there any questions for me with the design? It's a high-level design right now. We have a lot of detail to work through, but really just giving you a kind of a quick blush of layout, circulation, proposed uses.
Yeah, council, what I would suggest is, with your agreement, we hear from the groups that are part of the development, and then we kind of go through Marty's questions kind of one at a time, if that's agreeable to everyone. And then we can just, as questions come up, we can call you back. If that works for you guys.
Great, thank you.
All right, thanks. Other people who would like to address the council on this development? Mr. Phelps, welcome.
Hello, Mayor McMillan and council. Thank you for your time tonight. I'm Mike Phelps, not the swimmer, the older, fatter, shorter version. I'm the president and CEO of Ridgeview, and I've been at Ridgeview 18 years and about 5 years as CEO. And I want to thank you for your time tonight. I've spent a lot of time in Victoria. In fact, I spent my birthday here Saturday night celebrating and throwing axes, and I have all my fingers. So
happy birthday, and we're glad to hear that.
Thank you very much. So. And I've gotten to know the community over my time and working with the chamber, with Mayor McMillan over those years as well. We've had our eye on this community for some time, and as the largest employer in Carver County, and looking at labor forces and understanding demographics, we think that Victoria is well suited for healthcare. In fact, many of the communities, we have 14 clinics in communities all the way from Chanhassen, Excelsior, Spring Park, to the those in towns of 900 people. So we serve quite a different variety of the size of communities, and really feel like with Victoria's plans and how big you have plans to grow in the future, that it makes sense for healthcare to be here and to have a footprint here for Ridgeview. We know that we have clinics, 6 miles or so away in different communities, but believe that with the growth of your community, it can support healthcare on its own. And in fact, at the recent community meeting we had, we offered up to do some kind of survey from the community to see what kind of services that they would like to have in the community. And in the planning council, we as well did have feedback, about potential pharmacy, which we can talk about. But so our message would be, we're really here to see if we can get aligned on approaching MnDOT, frankly, around a controlled intersection. And I believe that there's no better time than right now. Minnesota's never had more money than it has right now, right? So perhaps there's a way that we can approach them together.
Mr. Phelps, you indicated that this project for you in Victoria might be as many as 3 to 5 years out. Can you, when we had initially talked, can you shed a little more light on that?
Yeah, for sure. So, I know Hometown Bank has been looking at this project since 2014. We haven't specifically been looking at this site, although I'll tell you, I drive Highway 5 just as often as all the rest of everybody else in my travels, and that's a beautiful prime rib piece of real estate right there. And frankly, I think one of our questions to the council is, what do you envision there? It's a beautiful site. It's an amazing entrance to the city, and we would love to have a site on that. So, as a part of our request, and we've done this with another city in Belle Plaine on 12.1 acres, so a significantly larger site, but same principle, where we would look at a business subsidy agreement in negotiation with the city, where within a period of time, we would commit to building a clinic with X numbers of jobs at X dollars amount per hour average wage, and within that period of time, we would have that clinic built. And that's really, devil's in the details. There are the angels in the details, I guess would be a better way of saying it.
But at this point in time, you don't really have anything on your capital plan to build in Victoria today. So
it
this
has
would be
been
something
approved by our board to be here today and talking about this project. So we have that level of commitment.
Okay.
Does that mean that there's been money set aside, approved?
Yeah, we're not nearly as disciplined as you are on three. In fact, Paul Ham from our organization here helps run our capital committee as well. We generally plan 1 year kinds of projects like this, and we're very opportunistic and have the capacity to look within that time frame to do something like this.
Could you explain more about the clinic? I'm sorry, about the clinic and what type of services
Yeah. This would be what we would really, my intuition tells me that it would be some kind of express care. And as we talk to the community as well about hours of operation, usually those are not open beyond 8 p.m. at the latest. We would look at primary care, OBGYN, pediatrics, those kinds of things that I think it looks to us as your demographics would support, and certainly with your future plans and your developments and your housing growth, we would expect, families, and how can we serve those kinds of families? This is, our portion of this parcel is, starts with 8,000 square feet with 3,000 more square feet to build out.
Councilmember Gunderson?
On an affordability, talking about jobs and affordability, how many of the employees, based on on their paycheck, using affordability metrics on a percentage of the paycheck, how many of those employees would be able to afford a median value home in Victoria? So they're spending 20, 30, or 40% of their paycheck on a mortgage. How many of those jobs are going to be able to support a house, whether it's single or dual, in the city? Is something that we're going to want from probably all of that. I'd leave that question open for all of the people that are interested in this, because the goal is to bring people into Victoria not only to utilize services but also to live here. And we are probably arguably the fastest growing community in the county and probably the state. So,
well, thank you for the question, and I would tell you that housing is one of our, as the largest employer in the county, housing and transportation are two huge things that we're interested in. And so I might say, can we have a dialogue about what kind of affordable housing do we have available to support that variety of different jobs? We will have everything from physicians, obviously, being able to obviously afford that housing, to, nobody pays minimum wage anymore. Minimum wage with, the shortage of labor is, more like $20 an hour for us. So I think anywhere in between those ranges are what we're going to look at for talent within our facility.
Good. All right, thank you.
You bet. Thank you.
Other folks who want to address the council from the development group? Mike, hi. Mr. Orth, welcome.
Hi. Nice to see you. Thanks for allowing us to be here. I'm Mike Orth. I'm with Hometown Bank. I've been with Hometown basically my whole life. The bank's been around almost 100 years, but the second location is in the little town that I'm from. And, it was really just the two original banks for the first 80 of our years. And then we've grown here recently. So we have banks along the 169 corridor as far south as St. Peter, all the way up through Shakopee. Now we've got Waconia kind of in the middle. And Daryl Karski, our CEO, he's here. He probably remembers his first day at the bank. He had just come from a different institution where he was working on branching bank locations, which is very unique. Not a lot of banks are doing brick and mortar. And we had this idea, and he was the perfect person at the perfect time, which is the only reason that we ended up in Waconia in the first place. And frankly, it's the reason that we're able to do something like this too, because of the expertise that he brought. And then everything came together with Mocha Monkey, and the rest is history. So in the 8 years that we've been in Waconia, we've done way over $250 million of new loan originations from zero. And those loans are to people that are just like us. We finance pretty much anything, and we deploy all those dollars in town. And to your point, Commissioner Gunderson, or Councilmember Gunderson, we try to hire within the communities that the banks are as well. And then as far as this project is concerned, I just think that it's a big opportunity for a small bank like ours. We have 10 locations total, and we're not the largest bank in the world, so we have to be pretty judicious about what we choose to do and when. And on the very short list of communities that would be our top to be in, this is it. And for lots of reasons that it's all public information. If you pull up the FDIC deposit market share of any community around, you can see the total aggregate deposits within that community. And then you compare something that should be apples to apples to like the size of the financial institution in any town, and specifically Victoria. It suggests that a significant amount of the wealth banks somewhere else. And so we think that's an opportunity for somebody, and we would like to come in and be a really good partner in every single way that we could be. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Terrific. Anything for Mr. Worth right off the bat?
I appreciate you answering the question. You answered a question I did have about that. Banks aren't building brick and mortar anymore. Online banking is obviously taking off. But one thing I do want to know is if you can look into your crystal ball and tell me how long you're going to be Hometown Bank, because I watched Anchor and whoever it was before Anchor turn into Old National. Klein turned into Old National. Huntington was TCF. Norwest is no longer, and that's an ancient bank, but that's Wells Fargo in Minnesota. We're making a deal. We're doing this with you, and Hometown Bank is going to be Hometown Bank in 10 years. And is it going to become something else that maybe the residents like Hometown Bank now, but don't like whatever gets bought out? And so I'm curious to find out longevity, that you're coming to be a part of the community and going to hopefully, and I understand business is business, but looking to have good community partners, and we don't want a bank coming in and then a purchasing entity shuts down that bank. Now we got an empty building. So sorry.
It's a really good question. A lot of industries are going through consolidation, where it's not just banking, but it seems like banking has been just primed for just fewer and fewer and fewer. Our long-term plan, so I can speak from the holding company that owns the bank, I can speak from that board standpoint. Our goal is to remain independent. So we are long for staying Hometown Bank. Our list is longer than normal for things that we've been working on this year, but one of which is a total rebrand and renaming of our insurance company, and creating a new logo for the bank. And we actually started a new company too, which is an aside. But we wouldn't be making those types of investments. We wouldn't be working on a brick and mortar project that takes a while to break even. You know, if you were somebody who was being short on being independent, you wouldn't be working on that, if that makes sense.
Other questions? Great. Thanks, Mr. Worth. Anyone else? Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to staff too.
Yeah,
I'll say something if that's
yeah, please. Tell us who you are.
My name's John Schmidt. I own the Mocha Monkey Coffee Shops. So we currently have 2 locations in Waconia, the one that's in the Hometown Bank, and then one that is in downtown Waconia, and then one in St. Bonnie as well that has a drive-through. Have you guys all been to a Mocha Monkey before in Waconia? So just a really quick backstory. I took over that original downtown location when I was right out of college. Like, I was 21 years old, and I took over for Pam Bronworth, who really had this like artsy feel, really wanted Mocha Monkey to be a community gathering place for Waconia. And I was just a little young kid that had a lot of ambition, and came up to her one day and said, hey, like, would you be willing to sell to me? And she's like, maybe, you know? And a lot of things happened. A few years later, like, I took over, learned the business pretty well, and then Mike approached me about opening a second one, which scared the heck out of me. I thought of myself as like an artist and a potter and a guy that just ran a coffee shop, but then this was like the next step to make an investment in the company and grow it even more. And in Waconia too, because Caribou was opening at the exact same time, and they were bringing a drive-through. So we did that Hometown Bank location. It turned out better than I could have ever hoped and expected. Like, you know, so many of our customers that would have gone downtown and maybe gone to the Caribou's and Starbucks now had an option to shop locally, you know, and not, you know, give all their money to the big Fortune 500 companies. We opened the St. Bonnie location a few years later, and then I kind of put a pause on, like, I don't think I want to open any more stores. Like, the staffing has been issues over the years, and that was like 6 years ago at this point. But Mike and I have been talking about coming to Victoria since then, and there's really no other location that I would go to right now with a Mocha Monkey besides Victoria. We get emails all the time from different towns around Minnesota that want us to come. And it's just, I feel so strongly that this Hometown Bank Mocha Monkey partnership would work as good or better than the one that we did in Waconia. that I feel like that's where I really want Mocha to be in this town. I see a lot of similarities between Victoria and Waconia, considering like the downtown kind of vibe that you guys have, plus a highway-like vibe, which is kind of similar to what Waconia has. So yeah, I see a lot of potential. I'd love to answer any questions you guys have. Yeah.
Councilmember?
I have a couple. So you're proposing a drive-through only, is that correct?
No, it would also be in store. So if you've ever been in the Waconia bank location that we have, during the banking hours, we have a huge lobby. So we share a lobby with the bank. So there's, I don't know how many seats there are, 50 to 60 seats. And then when the bank closes, since our coffee shop hours are longer than the bank's, then there's these sliding glass walls that close and people can enter from a different area so that they can access the coffee shop from 5:30 a.m. until 7 p.m. And so we have probably 25 seats when the bank is closed, and then when the bank is open, it's like this huge spacious lobby with fireplaces and conference rooms that people can access anytime to use for free. So it's a really cool design. So shout out to HTG, they did that over there, and we would do the similar thing here.
Okay.
How late would you be open? I'm sorry.
So we've played around with hours, but 8 p.m. is where we started in Waconia, and then after COVID, we kind of like switched everything a little bit. So now we close at 7. So 5:30 a.m. till 7 p.m. is what we are in Waconia. So we would no later than probably 8, maybe 7, depending on what we feel.
And the proposal says 20 new jobs for you.
Yeah, we have about 20 people part-time that all work at each of our
They're
stores.
all part-time?
We have usually one full-time manager, potentially a full-time assistant manager, and then 17 to 18 part-time. It's quite a few high school, college-age kids that just graduated, anywhere from 15-year-olds up to many, full-time spouse and then part-time, on the nights and weekends types of stuff.
Okay, so these people would be coming from somewhere other than Victoria, probably.
Probably not. Most of the people that I would want to hire would be from Victoria. Like we'd maybe have a manager that comes from a different store right away. But then, the 15 to 16 part-timers would all be from Victoria. They would all be, we don't currently have enough staff to staff a fourth location, so we'd have to hire 17 to 18 new people.
Okay, because you do know that there's wanted signs everywhere.
I do know that, and actually,
you have it at your
Mocha
store too.
I know. We have really been quite lucky. I do think that working at a coffee shop is a fairly desirable job compared to people work at coffee shops often because it's a fun environment and it's a fun atmosphere, something to do. They don't necessarily always do it because it's like they got to feed their family with the money. We pay well and they make tips and everything, but that's not necessarily the main reason that you get a job at a coffee shop all the time. And so we've really been quite lucky. We have not had any staff shortages so far. We have hiring signs because we like to stay ahead and we see what's going on.
Councilmember Black, anything else?
So these aren't minimum wage employees?
Everybody's above minimum wage at the moment. Yeah. But a lot of the 16 to 17 to 18-year-olds start training at minimum wage.
Okay.
But the assistant managers, the daytime people, the people that have some experience in the job market, those would not be minimum wage.
Okay.
And everybody with tips makes probably 1.5 times minimum wage.
Okay, but still not enough to, if you're talking 16, 17-year-olds, but if you've got someone that is 18 or up that wants to live on their own, they would not be able to afford to live here.
It really varies a lot. We have a ton of different type of people that work at Mocha. I would say maybe half and half. Like a lot of it is part-time supplemental income. And some of them are more full-time, can, feed themselves and house themselves on the income.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I just had a comment that
Councilmember Gunderson.
if I'm not so concerned how late you're staying open. I'm more concerned with what time you're going to open, and you answered that. You answered open about 5:30.
5:30 a.m. Yep.
There's nowhere in Victoria that's open before 8, other than a gas stations for maybe and coffee at.
Well, I do know people asked that coffee was available earlier.
Yeah, so for us, you're missing prime drive time if you're opening at 8 because people are are already through Victoria at 8 o'clock, roughly?
Well, our downtown location, we open at 7:30, but both of our drive-throughs, we open at 5:30. And so that's kind of and that's a big difference. If we opened at 5:30 downtown, we'd be dead for hours. But the drive-throughs catch, especially on Highway 5. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Good.
I'm assuming the Waconia location has the same drive-through type setup. Do you see any congestion issues with the bank and your drive-through line intermingling, it looks like?
So the current plan for this site location is different than the one we have at Waconia.
Can you bring that up?
Marge?
Excuse me. Can you bring that up for us, Marty? That's a good question.
That is a good question. Our Waconia drive-throughs are on the opposite ends of each other.
Okay.
So this one I would have to let Sean talk about the design of this one, because so far it's been, this is really high level stuff. So getting more into the details would come down the line. But we don't see any congestion at the Waconia location between the two.
All right.
I drove by there today.
Sure. But this sounds like it's different. That's a different setup, so it's not really
Yeah,
apples to apples.
I think this is a question for me as well. So I think this might be a good time to ask Sean to come forward and just talk a little bit about how traffic is going to circulate through this site. So on that one, the rendering, it looks like
Can you blow that up, Mark?
You want the rendering?
yeah, please.
You can blow up the rendering.
It looks like okay, there we go. It looks like the one drive-through might be on the north side and the other might be on the
That is correct.
west side.
Yeah. Again, Mayor and council members, Waconia is set up a little different. We were able to provide drive-ups on either side of the building. Again, the coffee shop traffic drive-up is going to be more heavily populated than the bank's drive-up, and they have different peak times. Here, the real crux of it was we were trying to provide almost 18 car stacking. I know in the traffic study they were looking at 14 is the requirement, and then working with staff, with Marty and Isaac, if we could get as many possible without impeding any parking and or circulation. So really that's what's the driving force of why we've positioned the drive up for the coffee and the bank. So we have the stacking along close to Highway 5 and then circulating around the building. So we have the menu board, which would be a natural pause before you would impede into the cross traffic of the bank. So there will be an initial stop to make that order, and then the bank traffic would allow to pass through and have their own bypass, and then the coffee shop would continue through into the queuing lane after they've made their order and then make their pickup and head out. But the stacking is what really drove the circulation and the pattern of how it's positioned, and then also trying to give as much buffer on that 100-foot setback between the residential and the drive up. Is we were trying to bring all the drive up along Highway 5 so that cars, running and whatever are more positioned towards Highway 5 than they are near the neighborhood.
So I can see where you're coming into the development. You're kind of circling around the bank, and then the outer driveway is the coffee, and the closer one is the bank. So but where do people come? Where do they, like, if you're going to come in and go drop your kid at a daycare or go to an appointment, where do those folks come?
So as you come and circulate through, if you're heading to the daycare, you would stay along the perimeter and then come through and then do drop off, and then you could circulate through and go right into the coffee without impeding any parking or going through the intermediate. Yes.
So do they have to sit in the coffee line?
No, they can exit through the parking. You can see the green line, so they can make an immediate left and come and access out. They don't have to go through the coffee. We just were thinking as parents, they've just dropped off their 3 kids and they're pulling their hair out and they wanted to pull in to get their coffee. Yeah. So we were just trying to make...
I've been that parent, so yes. I get it, yes.
So,
yeah, okay, myself. But I see that they don't have to go that way.
No, there's several exit paths out of, you can make a left, you could also go into the bank and then exit out of there as well. Okay. We just tried to separate the stacking of the drive up for the coffee and the bank completely separate from any vehicular and pedestrian traffic from the parking.
Got it.
Okay. 3 kids in daycare, you won't be buying coffee.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. All right.
I did have a question about the layout as far as the little dotted area. Isn't that the wetland?
Yes, so that's on the far east there, Commissioner, or council member, sorry. Yeah, that's right now it's designated as a shallow marsh. We did do a wetland delineation. I'm waiting on the final results. We've had some preliminary reports, but we're still waiting to find out what we can do with that type of area. If we are able to push east, it'll help allow a little bit more parking and circulation. But right now we are trying to stay out of that shallow marsh area. We haven't got too far into with the wetland and the watershed yet until we get a little bit more direction from here. That's what we're kind of looking for.
Isn't that a holding pond?
Yeah, it drains right down from my neighborhood.
Yeah,
Right.
everything.
We need that.
There, obviously, we'd work with the watershed and work with, there could be some underground storage. We're still waiting on some soil boring testing. So there's a lot of bigger picture things that we're waiting for on some details. But right now, we're looking for your help to know if the development and overall big picture looks well before we move into a lot of that minutia and really finite detail.
Absolutely.
It is the type of business in that daycare center, is that set in stone? Is that something that, is that the type of business that absolutely needs to be there, or is there something else that could serve a smaller footprint that would serve just a equal amount of tax, bringing the tax into the community? I'm just asking that because I don't want to get into dealing with any of the wetland. I don't know if Kara can answer this from an engineering standpoint, but if we do this in our 100-year floods that we had for 5 years in a row, or whatever it was when we were all wet, how much flooding would we cause problems to 5 with flooding, knowing that there would be the Enki holding pond on one side and this with runoff plus what comes down from up on the hill?
Ms. Guerin.
Thank you, Councilmember Gunderson. You are correct. It is a fairly large drainage area that runs through this area. Minnehaha Creek is actually really familiar with it, though. They did a wetland restoration project a number of years ago on the adjacent property. So those are all the things that they will regulate and work through on the city's behalf, and they'll keep us apprised as they move through. But it's still early in the process. Typically that detail doesn't get dived in until the applicant knows they have a project to work on further. But certainly that'll all be evaluated.
All right. Marty, I'm going to ask you to kind of help direct us through the questions that you have so we can provide some appropriate direction. We got to be careful we don't all pretend we're engineers here.
Mayor and Council, if I can just say, as Marty is pulling those questions up, he's listed considerations, which I think personally are all the right things to be asking and thinking about. I just caution you, I don't need to, but I'll do it anyway. As a group, let's not be voting on these things. It's premature, of course, to take a poll on where we stand on these. And I think I'd ask you to be open-minded yourselves individually about these too. So give feedback. That's the purpose for tonight. But sort of let's not pretend that we know all of the answers or have all of the information to reach conclusions about these points at this point.
Mr. Vos, good point. Thank you so much. So I think the first thing we want to talk about is they are requesting a rezoning. So this is currently zoned residential, and we want to zone that to a different commercial use. So from my perspective, I like the idea of having a commercial property on that piece of property. That does not give me heartburn at all. Anybody else have a different opinion about that?
I think, being open-minded from what Bob said, I think the best and the best use of this property isn't residential, because putting homes in there, I mean, I can't imagine how expensive they're going to be if we have to put a roundabout in there anyway. I don't know who's going to want to live there, kind of, performing in front of everybody as they drive by. So best use of this land for me is some commercial development, whether it's this project, another project down the road, whatever it might be, but that's for this particular piece of land.
I do have a question about the zoning. So I know during the Planning Commission, they had some questions. I think it was Commissioner Moore. She talked about zoning and how that affects our parking. I'm less concerned about the parking because of, this is like quick stuff, right? You're going in, you're getting your cup of coffee. I mean, you could hang out there for a while. You're dropping your kids off, you're leaving. My concern would be and I think some of the residents brought up, right, the noise and light concerns. obviously, most of these businesses will be, it sounds like 8 o'clock, probably at the latest type thing. But what, God forbid, the daycare doesn't make it, and someone else decides to come in, and, more than likely it's not going to be like a restaurant or something there, but, you never know, right? What if something comes in that is more apt to being at night? Is there anything we can do from zoning ordinances that limits what could come in there so that we're not disrupting residents, with a bar at, bar close time? Is there anything that?
Mr. Dahl.
Yeah, Councilmember Roberts, Mayor, members of the council, it's a valid point and a valid question, because if this property were to be rezoned to CBD, Central Business District, you would then have all of those permitted uses that are within a CBD, that if this site were to, a building were to turn over, or in 20 years there was redevelopment. I think, absent a new commercial zoning district being established that speaks to only those specific uses that we would want to see in this area. And I don't know, Bob, if you've got any additional insight on that, but I don't know, absent a new district being created that limits some of those other uses, I don't know what other options there would be.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, I guess I was guessing that I might be asked the question after you spoke to it, Marty. I think I would probably say the answer to your question is yes. You asked, are there things that could be done? I think the answer is yes. What those things would be, I don't want to try and look into the crystal ball, as Councilmember Gunderson said. But the answer is yes.
So if, I'm sorry, Mayor.
Go ahead.
So if we rezone it as a city, right, we're losing control of what could potentially go there from a commercial perspective.
If we zone it CBD.
Yes, if we
zone it CBD, but my question would be is, how easy is it to zone it something else? Maybe it's commercial early close.
Well, Mayor and Council, I guess just as first principles, at being asked to change your comp plan, change the guiding of the property, and then change the zoning of the property is both asking you to do legislative things. Those are both legislative decisions, and so you could legislate. You could create new zoning districts or do something else. Again, I don't want to speculate about the things you could do. You could do a lot of things. To have controls in place that would satisfy some of the concerns about, is a bar restaurant can replace childcare at some point, or whatever the concerns may be. You are being asked here to legislate new zoning and new guiding for these properties, and you have in effect a blank slate to do that. And I don't want to get ahead. I don't want to lean out over my skis more than I typically do. So
how does that look? I guess, does that delay their right? Does something like that, does it take a good period of time for staff to put that together and then us to, vote on that? Does that delay development?
Yeah, I think Mayor and Council, I'm starting to step on Marty's toes now too, in addition to leaning over my skis. But certainly, I think creating a new district and creating something out of whole cloth likely takes longer. But I don't know that the time pressures that you're faced with now are really prohibitive of doing that, if that's the direction that we feel, staff initially feels, and ultimately you feel this needs to go. I doubt that is so time consuming that it's not feasible. I think that's not the case.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm seeing, anybody else have thoughts on zoning, rezoning? Everybody seems to be generally supportive of that idea.
We can move on to the opinion on.
We are. So we're just gonna we're
Jumping at the bit.
I'm looking at the two of you and thinking you might have something to say. And if you do, it's now is time.
I do, but I think it's more.
It's not relevant to the zoning?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Yeah. All right, let's talk about this beast of a roundabout, shall we? There's a lot of good questions to think about here, and the fact that we don't have control over this, but would be required to be taking the lead in this, and we don't, we've got a $1.8 million cost that is in essence a beginning, and looking to at least do some sort of cost share on this. I have a question for Kara on this, in that, do we have a policy or a precedent that has been set on any kind of a cost sharing with a development property on some kind of this kind of a situation?
Mayor, members of the City Council, the only kind of relevant example that I can think of that's not a long time ago would be the Highway 11 improvements that the city is undertaking. So that's improvements on a county road to facilitate development of Huntersbrook and what's now called Marsh Hollow. The city led with the county through that process to determine what the vision for that corridor would be in response to the development. The city is entered into a joint powers agreement with the county, and the city is facilitating those improvements. The developer, through the development agreement, is cost sharing in that project, and the way we approached that was taking a look at the county's development-driven cost participation policy. That policy makes the city responsible for particular elements to the construction, and then we're recouping some of those costs from the developer. So, conceivably, you'd have a similar process like that for a situation like this. The developer isn't going to hire an engineer and go build a roundabout on Highway 5. The city would need to do that. So we would have to likely enter into a cooperative agreement with the state where we would need to lead the development of the plans and the construction, and then would be seeking to recover costs through a development agreement with the developer.
Council, let's talk about roundabouts.
Go ahead.
Councilmember Gunderson.
Marty, can you pull up the picture that of the controlled intersection that isn't the roundabout? Help me lead into the question about
Park?
the Arboretum plan. Sorry, the Arboretum plan.
That's at Park.
Yeah, the controlled intersection at there.
Here you go.
Thank you. If that is not a fire station, is it possible to make a frontage road going down to that parcel? Would that be possible? If it did not affect a fire department? I'm asking because we've talked about moving the fire department. If the fire department is not there, and that's not something that we have to deal with response times, emergency vehicles, et cetera, is a road going down to that business, if that parcel of land possible?
Councilmember Gunderson, we've spent quite a bit of time looking at the possibilities for connections through that property. It is correct to say that in a number of instances, we've spoke about it through the lens of the fire station being there. But there's some topographic challenges that even, the notion of trying to fit a pedestrian connection through there is going to be a challenge. So over the years, we haven't come up with a way that we think that we could make that connection happen. I mean, it's going to continue to possess a public works function. Because the water treatment plant is there, you're going to continue to have those types of uses in the area. So my long-winded answer is we don't think we could make that connection work.
Okay. My problem with the roundabout is that it closes access to already established Victoria businesses, and I'm not for something that's going to force traffic or clients and customers, and have us to get into another problem where the business is already established. They're used every day. And so if we can find another way in, this seems to be a place that we would be able to do that. A roundabout does close off some access, correct? To already established businesses that would have to be found somewhere else.
So we would need to work through that process. That's, speculative at this point, that we would anticipate that MnDOT would be looking for some access management. MnDOT's in the business of looking for access management on trunk highway corridors because of safety and congestion issues. So, if the direction from the council was, we want to figure out a way to make this work, we really would have to re-enter into some of the same work that was done with the Arboretum Area Transportation Plan, where we hire a consultant, we do some conceptual layouts beyond what's been done in the traffic impact study that's been created. And then we'd have to have public engagement as part of that process, of course, because we would with any process pertaining to transportation improvements to get some feedback along the way. And through that, you would really flush out the details of, if and when closures would be expected. MnDOT can't just arbitrarily go close access. The Dairy Queen access is a good example of that. That's a pretty dangerous access, but MnDOT can't just, go close the access without providing an alternative. So, the timing of what those closures would look like would be work that would be taken as part of that next level of work that the city would have to do.
Do any of these plans of this current plan, this markup or the roundabout, do they affect any of the residents on the south side of 5 or the businesses on the north side of 5 from a land purchase standpoint? As far as I know, the Arboretum transportation plan proposal that we saw was flipping the grass and the sidewalk on one side, and they said they did not have to purchase any land to do any of what they were going to do. Do either of these options change that in the long run, where we're going to oust residents or businesses?
So to answer your question, the Arboretum area transportation plan does not identify the need for additional right-of-way through this part of the corridor. I would just note that what you're seeing on the plan includes the extension of Tower Boulevard, which is through private property. Now, that is the city's downtown master plan that's driving that being drawn on this Arboretum area transportation plan. With the roundabout, it appeared, based on the conceptual level work that was done, that there was adequate room. But we'd have to take a look at what that layout looks like against the future 4-lane. So you would need to be designing that roundabout so that you can accommodate the expansion to 4-lane. That's not scheduled for, a number of years, but certainly you don't want to build the roundabout in such a manner that would...
We'd have to rebuild it?
Yeah.
Right, because they're talking a single lane.
So I have a question. In terms of the roundabout, and you talked about the Hunters Marsh, that area, and that partnership with the developer. I guess I don't know who I'm addressing this to in the audience here, but are you willing to participate in the funding of this, or is it solely responsible of the city's responsibility? Again, I don't know who I would be addressing that to, but I just curious to know.
Thank you. It's a good question. I think we went into this thinking we are businesses that we feel are reputable and we're proud of our companies. And we wouldn't come to your town and say, give us everything, I think we want to be good partners. We fully expect to contribute. The part that's tricky with how exactly is this going to look is there are a lot of dials that are moving around still as we continue to fact find and get a little bit closer all the time. So I'd love to just say this is exactly how it'll work. But what we have to do is we have to try to get 3 parcels that are somewhere around a market purchase price that makes sense. And then we can back into how much of the roundabout we can pay for. And then, there's, without getting too much further into it, I think the answer is we fully expect to participate and pay our fair share. Yeah.
Very good.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
Mayor, can I speak?
Certainly, come on. Mr. Byrne, welcome.
My name is Jeff Byrne, owner of Steiger Lake Stores and Cabin Fever Sporting Goods at 1550 Arboretum Boulevard. First of all, I want to say, having people come to town to invest in our community is great. I'm glad we see more and more people. So I'm for a project that we can bring more people in the community and everything. However, this plan, which I was not aware of until this fall, which I'm kind of disappointed that I wasn't any part of when you're running a major road right through my business. And of course, if a roundabout comes in and affects my traffic entrance for coming in, then it's something that I cannot be in favor of. So I want to let you guys know that I'm in favor of people coming to the town, but it's still my business. That road going through there right now, it cuts off 365 days of trailer traffic. That's boat traffic during the summer ATV traffic, fish house traffic during the wintertime. There's absolutely no way that we can use any of that traffic, which completely kills my business. That's all of our business there. I've seen plans where they're going commercial and coming around. And again, if you put a roundabout down there, which then I've heard that's good chance that right in, right out, or it closes off my entrance across from the fire station. Again, that absolutely does not work for us. It cuts off all of our main traffic coming into our business. So I want you guys to know that this is my 35th year in business. I was the first, I believe, new commercial building in Victoria when I built this building in 50 years. I'm not planning on retiring yet, but the 10-year plan, which you talk about, falls into my retirement type deal, which makes my building pretty much obsolete to sell. Working 6.5 days a week pretty much all my life, it's not something that I want to see get thrown down the tube. So again, I'm for a development coming into our town. If it's into that spot, that's great. But if it affects my business, I just want you to know it's something that I can't be in favor of because it affects my business. So thank you.
Understand. It's a delicate balance, it's for sure, right? We want to make sure
Yeah.
we're on everybody.
I just have a question. When we pull into Cabin Fever and that entrance, are you saying that behind your building you have trailers?
No.
So what do you?
I'm saying, so if you come like this time of year now, if we get ice, we have people pulling fish houses. So they pull in to where our access is and they take a right, which then goes down into the Shell Station, Deep's property.
Right.
Okay. So number one, if you pull in there now, there's absolutely no place to put a trailer traffic, because if you go to the left, go west, I have no place to go out. And you can't turn a trailer around on the west side of the parking lot. So they come in and they go to the right and they park right along Highway 5. You want me to point that out so you can see?
Let's see.
Here we go.
So they come in, whether it's east or west, they come in and take a right where the road is right now. That's where the boat traffic and the trailer traffic will go.
There we go.
There you can
Okay,
see them
so
Right there.
lined up.
Plus, you're also eliminating my propane tank. That road is, and there's no other place to put that propane tank on the property. I can't put it on the other side of the road and walk across that road. I also, if you can see, there's a white vehicle and then a dark vehicle just on the east side of my building, no, right up against the building. Right past that is my loading gate. A semi that backs up into that area will go all the way to the east into that parking space where the other white vehicle is. So you're telling me that I'm going to have to back up a semi-trailer and block the major road. It doesn't work. Also, and I don't know what the city's policy is that the water and utilities run right along the backside of my property. So is that something common that you'll put a major road over the top of it so you don't have access to if there's a problem? That was one of the reasons we couldn't, build anywhere further back, is because the water line goes underneath there, right across the backside of the property.
when MnDOT was doing this, didn't they know this?
So again, Councilmember Black, it's the city's downtown master plan that is driving this. So that's a decision that the city made back in 2016 when we adopted the downtown master plan to show Tower Boulevard coming through this area. Now, that's a master plan exercise that's really visioned what could possibly happen to this land should the property owners in the area opt for redevelopment. So, I don't think there was a scenario where the city council at the time was saying, yeah, we're going to go build this road tomorrow. But if Cal opts to redevelop his property, just like we didn't have an apartment building here before we had houses. So it's a long range plan. And MnDOT certainly, as part of the Arboretum Area Transportation Plan, wasn't vetting a city roadway plan. There was a feasibility study done back in 2008 that does look at the road placement and the utilities in this area, but you know, that level of detail just doesn't happen at this master planning level, even on the Arboretum area side. Before any, and I say this about both the Roundabout project and the improvements you see on here, they're all going to go through additional public engagement and a much finer level grain of detail. Like the Arboretum Area Transportation Plan, they did a lot of public engagement. We had some specific meetings for downtown business owners, but when you're talking about like a planning level thing, you don't necessarily get a lot of people paying attention. And then as you start to get into, okay, we're going to build a project, what's going to happen to my property, then all of those things typically get brought to the table with the designers, and you know, they just took the master plan and plopped it on here.
But what I'm disappointed is I was, you know, as you adopt that plan, the city signed off on that with a major road. If someone came to and asked to buy my business, and then they found out that this is proposed in 10 years, do you think they'd buy it? No. So it becomes, my property becomes invaluable. So does that mean I should be paying $40,000 a year in taxes when I have a non-valuable piece of property to sell? So
I think
I'm disappointed in the city that adopted this without contacting me. I really am. I mean, you're putting a road right through a major part of my building.
Okay.
And you guys weren't part of it.
We weren't part of
it. No, and I'm not saying, but I'm just saying the city as a whole.
Yeah.
I think that's a joke.
Understood. Yeah, understood.
So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you, Jeff.
All right. Let's go back to our list here. Oh, we wanted other additional comments about the roundabout.
So currently, the roundabout is basically just servicing that new development. It's not servicing anything else.
We would service that and impose a hardship on the other side from
The roundabout.
the roundabout, based on this iteration of the project.
And that's, I mean, if we said, let's continue down the path and see where MnDOT gets us with the roundabout, and see what would they propose? Could we still maintain openings? What does this right in, right out look like? One of the questions I would have for the development group is there an opportunity? So we know that this Arboretum transportation plan, this Highway 5 thing, is going to kind of evolve over the next 10 years or more. And is there a way that, is there a scenario that would be acceptable for a period of time, knowing that we could hopefully get full access at some other point? Or is that just a deal breaker for you guys? Anyone have a thought about that?
Like a right in, right out. For
Yeah,
now.
if we could do. Yeah, come on up. Mike.
Thank you. And I've spent way more time analyzing the Arboretum traffic plan than I ever even knew that I should. But certainly, if you think about, I mean, 4.5 acres on the main thoroughfare, and it's not included in the traffic plan. I get that it was zoned to something else, but things can change zoning wise, right, on occasion. So, and then, you know, certainly Jeff's. I think some other sites are planned too by MnDOT to close. I think Deep's access was going to close on Shell and turn into a roundabout coming up. So I do think going to MnDOT and thinking about how can we get some clarity on these things would be a good process. That wasn't your question. But what was the question?
Would you consider something?
Yes.
I don't want to say temporary, but
No. So, you know, our history is we built on all the main east-west thoroughfares, and if you think about the number of traffic coming in and out of this site, even though a lot of it we hope is you know, our you know, folks from the community access and some of the services. We absolutely need a controlled intersection. How long? I think for Ridgeview, we're going to be a little behind some of the other development. So I think our answer might be different than what the bank and the other business might be. But I think at this point, because we really want to be aligned with the city, you know, there are no no's, I think, at this point. And we would want to say, how can we go to MnDOT together and say, you know, there needs to be a controlled ingress and egress along this piece of Highway 5, somewhere along the line. And so how best do we accomplish that together?
Point. Thank you. What's the process for going to MnDOT? I mean, can we push them and say, we have to have an answer on what this is going to look like? What do they say to us?
Mayor, members of the City Council, so the materials that have been submitted to date have been provided to MnDOT to provide some preliminary feedback. But again, if the city wants to pursue this change, we need to pursue it. So we'd likely be looking at us retaining some services of a transportation engineer to start to vet out some of these questions, and then you present it to MnDOT for reaction. MnDOT's not going to, you know, dedicate staff time to facilitating construction of a roundabout to meet future development needs. You know, if you had by comparison, the access or the intersection by Dairy Queen, MnDOT is putting staff resources to that intersection. They're doing a scoping study to see how a roundabout would fit in that location because there's a known safety issue there. So they're responding to a known existing issue that's a problem on the trunk highway. But this is really a development-driven proposal that the city would need to spend some resources on, then pursuing agreement from them and, you know, our other project partners that this, because funding is a huge piece of it. The city of Victoria certainly doesn't have $1.8 million to fund against the 26 million other lists of priorities we've identified for our city funds in the next 20 years. So, you know, we'd have to be working with the county too to say, yeah, this is a strategic priority and we're going to bump this up in our funding application plan, that we're going to pursue funding for this one sooner than later, and instead of what. So, you know, I met with the county just last week. We haven't gone through this with the council yet at all, but they're getting ready for another round of grant funding. So they're meeting with the cities to get input on what the city's priorities are. So we'd want to be saying, yeah, we've decided that this one's our priority for the next round of grant applications. So those are just some of the steps that the city really would need to take to be able to help move that needle forward.
Councilmember Roberts.
So we keep hearing the number 1.8 million, but that obviously is a very low, right? Like that's just the construction cost is my understanding, right? There's design, there's going to be soil issues. I think you guys talked at the planning commission, right? This foam tire, styrofoam or whatever it was to help so it's the sinking. I mean, how much work or how much time and money would be spent finding out what the actual, I mean, how much this is actually going to cost? Because, you know, I like the idea of these community, right? The community bank, we got a community clinic coming in. We've got, you know, all these great amenities that I think our residents would like. But, you know, what ultimately is that cost going to be? And I know it's hard because, you know, we don't know how much, you know, you guys are willing to put in at this point. You know, you said you're willing to come to the table, but we don't know what that number is going to be. Yeah. No, I know. So, you know, and, you know, from hearing from residents, right, like you say, hey, we could have a clinic and it's great. We want a clinic. I don't have to drive somewhere. But then you're like, but it's going to cost $2 million, right? Like, because of the roundabout. So are residents, is it important to have a clinic, or is it, you know, I'm fine driving 10 miles away to Chanhassen, right? Like 10 minutes, I meant, sorry if I said miles, 10 minutes away, you know, to, you know, so that's where I'm struggling with this, is that the cost,
Plus,
plus,
the medical doesn't have a pharmacy, so they're still going to have to drive 10 minutes somewhere to get their prescription filled.
I mean,
well, there's potential for that, but It's
I
just,
know.
it's the
And-
knowing what that actual, because
It's-
1.8 is not what the cost is going to be.
Well, and I think we're all sensitive to the fact that how much money do we want to spend? It's money well spent if it turns out positively, but if we get down the road and we spent a lot of money and
Yeah, I mean,
it doesn't turn into a project, then that's,
we hear resources, consultants, hiring, and we translated that behind here to impact to the taxpayers. What's our levy gonna go up next year if we include these resources into our budget? That's where our head has to be, right? That's, I mean, we're gonna start that process in what, February again?
20 minutes. Yeah.
Dana?
Dana.
Mayor, Councilmember Gunderson, members of the council, you just adopted your 2022 budget, and this funding is not contemplated in there.
Yeah.
So you would have to delay or bump something for this to move forward in 2022.
And we don't know what that would cost.
I meant the 2023 budget.
Yeah, I understand.
In addition to all those good points, right? We haven't even talked about the land swap.
Oh, yeah.
And what that looks like, right? I'm not, I want to learn more about it on the surface. I'm not sure how comfortable I am with it, but again, to Attorney Boyce's point, I want to be open about it. So, I mean, I think we have some good points, but we haven't even touched the land swap yet. And that's a considerable thing for the city to consider as well.
And I guess I would just ask the question that we haven't asked is the developer willing to put money into escrow for some of these services that we'll have to go and do for this? And that's we keep hearing that there's going to be money there, but is there going to be upfront money?
And I think that's
Help us
part of
with
what
that.
the development agreement looks like. If we want to continue to pursue this project, we would work out those details within a development agreement. Mr. Dahl, please.
Members of the council, just to elaborate on that a bit more, development agreement typically happens at the time of approval. We do, however, require escrow and payment for those types of pass-through services as a part of applications as well. So a preliminary plat application, for example, or a building and site materials would require an escrow. And then there's also an understanding that those pass-through costs are typically covered as well, administrative costs. So development agreement would be usually at approval, which would also include some escrow as well for engineering and those other type services.
I mean, we're talking about putting resources behind a project we're not even sure we can do based on the entrances for a lot of different reasons, not to mention our already established businesses.
Right.
So we're putting money that we would be using it on other things on the taxpayers for 2023 if this is something that we would want to do. So that's why I'm asking, is there a partnership up front doing this with the knowledge that it might not happen? I'm not saying that's not going to happen. There's potential that it might not happen based on all the work we've got to do to even get to a point to look at it and say, okay, it works for Jeff, it works for Deep, it works for you guys, it works for the city, it works for the state. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts here that we've got to nail down at minimal cost at best to taxpayers.
Yes, Mr.
If I may make a comment about the consideration that I think we're on, which is about Roundabout versus existing Arboretum area transportation plan, what's contemplated there. I just would say, and I suspect you know this as well, learning how to pull the levers within MnDOT is an expertise into itself. I suspect there's one or more people in the room that have worked on that before, but I think the ask to you, if I heard it correct, and maybe somebody will correct me if I didn't hear this correctly, but I think the ask is, are you open to coming up with a way to do that, a way to approach MnDOT in an effectively approaching them? Let's figure out how to do that. Are you open to doing that and finding out how long the timeline is for them to answer? Are they open to it or not, et cetera, et cetera. But sort of having a plan tonight about how you would get MnDOT to yes is not going to be possible. I mean, we can talk about this for a long time and not ever answer that question. So
Thank you for moving us along. Yes.
So if we did put a roundabout there, would that affect Deep's place or not?
I think it's fair to say it would affect everybody, all the businesses along Highway 5.
They would have to, and because we put the roundabout, they would have to close off the access?
It would just affect it. I mean, anything we do in that area is going to affect already established, new development, and the roads.
And I think we don't know exactly what those impacts are at this
So
point,
how do
but
we
we
even-
have to, well, I think what we're trying to do is to say, what Mr. Vos just said was, you know, we're trying to decide if we want to take it to the next step and figure out all these moving pieces. And that's what we're about here. And Mr. Dahl.
Mayor, just a quick point to Councilmember Black's question. As proposed or as shown in the concept, the opposite leg of the roundabout would be the access to the gas station and the condominiums and liquor store over there. So as being proposed, that would be part of that full access to that street, commercial.
All right.
Okay.
So how are you feeling about this? Do we want to spend some time talking to our friends at MnDOT and kind of seeing where this is going to go? I would be in favor of doing that. I think it's worth the conversation. I think there's a lot of benefit to doing this. I think it's worth the time and energy to engage MnDOT and find out where they are.
It's always worth the conversation.
Well, we didn't get an answer about the land swap.
Well,
we're
not there yet.
not
We're not there yet.
two different
So let's talk about Roundabout, yeah.
I
So,
would be in favor. I mean, it would
Okay.
be foolish not to at least explore the
Exactly.
opportunity, right? I mean, that's,
And
And then
they
we-
had proposed a possible access from the roundabout through the back to downtown, but the owner of that property is not interested. So that's just going to be three-legged deal, basically. Just a driveway into.
well, we'll figure out what that is going to look like later.
It's a lot of money.
It is, yep.
And I can guarantee it's going to cost more than $1.8 million.
so is there a development question? Is there a timeline that from a development perspective, I'm not sure how long MnDOT's going to take, but clearly there's some outstanding questions and we need to, I think as a council, we're open and willing to explore those options, but is there a timeline that we're up against in terms of a go or no-go decision from a development perspective?
Mayor, council members. Right now, there's no specific timeline. We're up against a clock. I mean, we obviously want to move things
Yeah,
forward
sure.
so we can make a informed decision and not just a gut reaction. So I guess if we can get the permission to continue to move forward with the conversations to find out, MnDOT might come down and say no. So that's clearly the answer. But if they're open to the conversation, then that may change things a little bit. But I don't think there's a specific date. I mean, Ridgeview really only has their timeline that's been established, but obviously, if we can keep things moving forward, the ground's frozen right now. There's nobody putting a shovel in the ground that they want to, so we got a little time yet. So
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Good to know. Thank you. All right, so you're good with that, Marty? You know where to?
I am. Kara, do you think you get good direction to move forward with that too? Okay.
Yes, thanks.
Mayor, do you want to go to the land swap questions? Okay.
Yes, let's talk about that. Council, will city receive adequate return on land swap for a medical facility, tax abatement, and other requested subsidy? Anyone want to start here?
I want to understand the land swap.
I
I
think,
heard something different than what I read, so.
I'll say more about that, Judy.
My understanding was that it was just going to be the amount of the clinic being swapped, but I heard at the planning commission, he said the 4 point whatever acres swapped. So I wanted to make sure I understood exactly how much they're asking to swap.
Okay. Somebody's coming we've got a new face. Hi, introduce yourself, please.
Bryce Hotzler, Greystone Construction.
Bryce.
Mayor, council members, thanks for having us. In regards to the land swap, in essence, what we would be looking at is the improvements of the development of the roughly 4.11 acres, and then that'd be broken up into 3 different parcels, one being the bank coffee shop, one being Ridgeview, and then one future daycare. The valuation of those improvements would be allocated equally among those 3 different parcels, and then the parcel that would be proposed as land swap or given to Ridgeview would only be isolated to their square footage and their valuation. So what we would be looking for in exchange in a land swap over on Downtown West would be an equitable transfer, not necessarily a square foot for square foot. So in simpler terms, if we're looking at roughly a 1.5 acre lot, it wouldn't be a 1.5 acre swap over on the Downtown West side, depending on what the improvement costs are. Any involvement in the roundabout costs could play into that as well. And so trying to come up with a valuation of that 1/3 parcel would be equitably swapped on the Downtown West side. Now what we're looking at in particular is the Building 4 location, which is north of the Building, I believe, 5 location that Cross Anderson is currently working on a preliminary development agreement with the city, and then north of the green space. Essentially we'd be looking at trying to develop a senior housing complex of some sort. I'm not sure what the structure of that would be yet, but we'd be looking at more than ideally roughly what that Building 4 pad is. That's roughly 50,000 square feet, or just over an acre. Building in that location would probably warrant more like a 2 acre or 2.5 acre parcel. And so whatever the valuation of the land being swapped from Ridgeview's plot would be transitioned from the Downtown West side. So whether that be additional dollars from the developer or offsets from the city on maybe permitting credits or any sort of abatement or infrastructure costs would be explored as well. So it's more of an equitable transition of value rather than land.
Question that, help me understand that land swap. It's not just the value of the lot. It's the value of the building and the construction. So we're not just necessarily doing a land swap. In my head, I was thinking lot for lot, but is that not the case?
It'd be for the building, improved building pad. So not including the building.
Okay.
As well. It would be the land and the improvement.
So it's prepped, so that whoever takes to prep the location to build the clinic.
Correct.
Right? Whatever costs are associated with that, but not the estimated cost of a fully developed clinic. Okay.
Councilmember Black.
So explain to me why we would want to do that.
That might be more of a question for Mike. Thank you.
Mr. Phelps.
I was going to see if he was going to try and answer that.
No, did you see how quickly he exited?
Yes, absolutely, yes. No, and good job explaining that much better than I think we accomplished at the Planning Commission. So why would you want to do that? Well, communities that we've approached, again, believe that healthcare is much like fire and police. In fact, we have had communities offer up subsidies ongoing to have healthcare in their community. We believe that we can find some kind of partnership and have done this before with other cities. And it's not a foreign concept where we come in, build the building on a piece of property that's developed, and we deliver healthcare services for a period of time with a number of jobs bringing into the community. We do pay taxes. I know that conversation has come up before. I think I mentioned it at the Planning Commission. And so we provide some value long-term to the community. And I will say, generally, primary care or the types of services that we would offer here, healthcare economics, those are generally not services that are profitable in the healthcare industry. Normally, profit is secured in downstream things, MRIs, CTs, ancillary services. And at the end of the day, you hope you have some kind of profit as a health system. So that's why having, some kind of subsidy agreements are common in scenarios like this.
Yep. So from my perspective, I would like to decouple this. I would like to not make the land swap part of this development. I'm not opposed to considering a subsidy for Ridgeview, but I would like to do it as a more of a standalone within the property that you're going to be on and really take the downtown west. It's a lot of moving parts. It overcomplicates something that's already really complicated. That would be my preference, is to take that piece of it out of the
Yes,
conversation.
I totally agree.
Other council?
I mean, is the land swap a requirement for Ridgeview to be here, or are you looking for, I mean, if there's some other thing we can do to, I guess, sweeten the pot for you guys, or if you are out, are there plans, another option of what would go in the Ridgeview space, I guess?
Yeah. Council members, so again, I think we're not saying no to anything at this point. If there's some other subsidy model, I would probably just ask the council and the mayor, how many times in your tenure here do you have a chance to do a $50 million project? Because that's what the combination of all of these projects together are. And nobody's built on that land because it's very, very difficult to do from a process standpoint. Ingress, egress, the ownership, what it's zoned for. We can appreciate the magnitude of work that it would go into this project. But if you look forward, and you just approved your 2022 budget. We're talking about a 2030 transportation plan. You said you're going to start your 23 budget in 20 minutes. That's a long time ago now. But, I think we're looking forward in the future and saying, what do you want this property to be? And can it kickstart your downtown west development as well? That's a big project, all in one failed swoop with a bunch of very difficult pieces put together. I can appreciate that. But we're just here to try and kick off the first start. Let's grab our legislators that we've talked to. I've talked to Steve Grove at DEED. We've got a lot of support to move this project forward. We got a hospital sign on Highway 212 when we built the 212 Medical Center. Nobody ever thought we would get that from MnDOT, but we did, because we went and asked and we told them about the project, and we helped them believe that this can be something more than what it was slated to be. In fact, halfway through, that was a 2-story project. It ended up being 4 stories by the time construction was done. I promise we're not going to land helicopters in Victoria, but there is a lot of potential for growth here, and we're bringing a lot of partners and a lot of money and a lot of jobs in front of you to plea for being aligned to take some of the first steps. And maybe it won't happen, but it won't be without trying. So I would leave it at that.
And don't get me wrong, we're all about it, but I want Greystone to come in. I want you all to come in. I do, and I appreciate the fact that you guys are willing to take a look at Victoria. But in my mind, I feel like I'd like to talk about those subsidy things separately. That would be my thought. That'd be my preference.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. I mean, that's the best answer I can give you on if it's going to be market rate senior living, or if it's going to be some form of affordable, because Victoria has an affordable issue. We don't have any. We have market rate and we have single family, and so and that's to our benefit sometimes. But Victoria for a lifetime is what we strive for and what we are trying to go to. And when people leave, they go to a less expensive dwelling, and we don't have any of those. I think I drag our median down. My neighborhood, it's the oldest neighborhood in Victoria, and everybody loves it. Nobody leaves. Our oldest neighbor is 90 years old, and she doesn't want to leave because she loves our neighborhood, but she has nowhere else to go either, because she also said she don't want to leave Victoria. So, it depends. Is that something that we can do? If we get some form of affordable, that's within our what we've talked about. I think that's a benefit. If it's not, then we got to talk about what it is and what it's going to be. Because right now, I think there's retail, and that's a mixed use. Is from what we've seen in planning. Right? That's a mixed use right there. Our goal is to not only have people in downtown, but also bring people to downtown and utilize our businesses. So those are the things that really are important for us. And don't take this as anything other than what it is, but it's easy to be for a project when you're not the ones giving out the money or having to decide the impact of the taxpayers. When we are asking for money, we're asking how it offsets any kind of pain we have out there in the community. So, we've got to be very diligent on how we evaluate our projects. So the best I can say is it depends on what it's going to look like.
But I think we're all in agreement, right? I think back to the original question was, are we going to set the table together to approach MnDOT to find out more costs, so forth and so on? I think that was question one, right? And I think
Even feasible.
I think we're all in agreement there to start that partnership, right? I think that's step one, right? So the other things, right? More to come, right? We need to get step one done, right? And see, if we can, and see what that looks like, right? I thought it may be a bad idea, but I thought from the downtown west, right? The whole city wants a grocery store. So it's possible to have a first level grocery store on top of, and then build on top of that for whatever else, right? For me, that would sweeten the pot for a land swap. 'Cause, if you ask the residents.
We still have to have affordable housing because other than the doctors, all of these businesses are going to be in that 15, 20, maybe $25 an hour. And, I looked up how much you need to make to rent around here. And for a 1-bedroom apartment, you need to make $38 an hour. So, and that isn't what we're bringing. Yeah. So we need affordable for people to live here and work here. So,
All right, friends, the clock is ticking. Let's see if we can stay on task here with with providing some direction for staff and the development group for this project. So, Marty, how do you feel about what else? Let us know what else you need from us here.
Mayor, members of the council, if I'm hearing correctly, it sounds like there is some hesitancy to be committal about land swap idea at this point in time, but potentially not completely off the table depending on the outcomes of roundabout discussions. Is that an accurate summarization or an inaccurate summarization?
I'm seeing nodding. All right.
Okay.
I know we have some other questions here.
And I think, and I'm sorry, this is getting long here, but just as as we move forward, and if things become more feasible, I do have some questions about direction related to the CBD design and performance standards. Like I mentioned in our presentation, there will be a site plan and building material review process that will be part of this that will further dig into it. But if we do continue to move forward and trying to refine designs, if there's any feedback related to the site layout itself and those requests for consideration of concession on those requirements.
Can you remind us on some of those concessions? I know there was a 100-foot setback problem.
Yeah, one of them is that 100-foot setback based on residential. So right now that's just, again, with the site constraints, the applicant in their current layout is unable to meet that. The other is the landscaped parking. So you're looking at some landscape areas in your parking on the side and front. And then the other is the zero front setback. Sorry, it's getting late. Zero front setback item where, in our downtown, we try to push those buildings to the street frontage.
And Mayor, on this one, I think I probably do want to really encourage you to, maybe, Mayor, the way to go at this one is just to say, does anybody have any particular comments or concerns about those asks? The reason I say that is because, all of these items are either a variance or a conditional use or the conditions in a conditional use. Those all turn on applications that you don't have, facts we don't have, details we don't have. So I totally appreciate staff raising these points, but maybe we could just, if somebody feels very strongly about having buildings that front on the front of properties, maybe we could hear about that. But beyond that, I think you need to have specific applications in front of you to really say much about these points.
Yeah, and I think, from my perspective, that 100-foot setback is given me a little bit of heartburn. It's a big area that's a big concession, and I'm hoping that we can kind of push back it once we figure out what the rest of that property looks like. But that 100-foot setback, there's a lot of, that's a big encroachment.
Chief was here. I mean, I think Judy and I are thinking the same thing, that it's a safety issue, especially in this location. It comes down to stupid drivers. Do we think that somebody's going to come up and over and crash into the building coming from downtown, leaving a bar? I mean, we've got 6 of them now. Is that something that can happen? Cochia, the sign on Cochia has been replaced twice in 4 months because somebody's run over it. That's a street sign on the corner of a street. It's been run over. So it's a safety issue for me and an insurance issue for you guys if you're willing to take that risk and having at some point the potential of a crash right through your building. That's just something to think about.
But we don't have to make that decision tonight, right?
I think we need to find out what this site looks like. You know, if we can push these buildings.
Well, you know, if MnDOT isn't going to play ball with us, then it won't happen. It's all moot, yeah.
Is it a deal breaker without the roundabout?
That's what they said.
I think without access to the site, controlled access is the issue.
Control. But you won't accept a traffic light?
They will, but I bet MnDOT won't give us one. Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Marty, what else do you need from council?
I think I will end it for you. I don't have anything else.
All right. Very good. Any additional comments for either the development team or the staff from council? All right. That was a big, good discussion. Yeah, a big, good discussion. So I think, Mr. Dahl, if you have clear direction, we will move on.
I am good, Mayor.
All right,
members of the
very
council.
good.
Thank you.
Kara, anything for you? You're good? All right, thank you. All right, our final, thank you very much to the development team. It was a long time for sitting in those great chairs. I'm going to see if we can get some lazy boys. Our final item on the regular agenda is 6.5 Steiger Lake Lane West Phase 1 Improvements and Preliminary Design Update. Presenting this evening is Kara Guerin. Ms. Guerin, please.
Mayor, members of the City Council, I had a 25-slide presentation for this that I'll just ignore.
No way.
I'm kidding. But we kind of suspected it would be a long night before we got to this one. So I don't have a specific presentation, but what we wanted to do was update the City Council on information that's been shared with members of the public. So we hosted an open house on November 30th here in the council chambers. We invited the property owners that are adjacent to the Steiger Lake Lane project, as well as downtown business owners. We had just the adjacent properties attend the open house, so it wasn't a mad dash of people. But the stage that we're at right now with our consultant is we're just reviewing the preliminary design. And so we're looking from feedback. So right now we got some feedback from the property owners. This preliminary work has been shared with staff. So staff's had an opportunity to provide input. But then also just wanted to show it to the council in case the council had any information that you wanted to contribute. So as a reminder, the project limits are from essentially the west side of the bridge located west of Rose Street, reconstruction of Steiger Lake Lane, up to an endpoint to be determined depending on timing with the Kraus project. So it's really an engineering question of where the project should end based on where their project is going to start. So it's kind of open-ended at this point. But this existing section needs to be reconstructed to city standard. We need to extend sanitary sewer through here to serve the 13.5 acres. As part of the project, we'll also be stubbing commercial-sized water stubs into each of these properties in the event they redevelop. We don't want to have to go excavate in a brand new street in order to give them the fire protection that they'll need for a sprinkled building. But essentially, we're proposing to mimic the road look and feel that you see from City Hall here headed east. So essentially, we would propose parallel on-street parking on the north side of the road, on the park side, construction of a sidewalk with trees and lighting and landscaping, similar to what we did on Steiger Lake Lane East. With the initial project, we aren't proposing to construct any of that on the south side. So it's really the same thing we did over here where, we have Kelly Green and we had potential properties that we're going to redevelop. We didn't want to invest in parking and streetscape features before you knew what a building would look like there, because you'd likely have to rip it up.
Right.
And rebuild it. So, if we had a development proposal in front of us, we'd work with that particular developer to see what they need for access and what they want for parking. But in this case, we're proposing to just put the curb line, literally same deal that we have over here. This plan does show the potential need for a retaining wall adjacent to the Three Rivers Park District property. Our consultant is doing some grading work to see what the grading impacts would be onto the Three Rivers property to avoid that retaining wall as a cost-saving measure. Retaining walls are expensive, so wanting to give us two options of either the wall or what it would look like without a wall that we would then meet with Three Rivers to see. They might be just fine with us grading in that area if there isn't a lot of significant tree impacts. And then the second graphic just shows some of the imagery that is contemplated for this area. So we'd be replicating the sidewalk with the pavers located behind the curb. So in the existing downtown, there was a lot more pavers used. Over time, the city has refined that to just be, if you walk this way, an edge behind the curb. And the construction technique for installing the pavers is not the same as what was done in the rest of downtown. That all needs to be ripped out and redone at some point.
Can't we just stamp concrete?
So our consultant,
Like pavers?
Our consultant did provide the city with information of the options for stamped concrete versus pavers. And our conclusion after reviewing the information that was provided was that pavers would be a better route for the city, provided that they're installed correctly. And Marty, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, Councilmember Black, Mayor, members of the commission, we looked at that. Sorry, Council, it's getting too late. We looked at that. We did ask that exact same question because we know we've had some issues with settling and things in the downtown area. The consultant actually provided their recommendation and recommended the paver route versus the stamped concrete. As Kara mentioned, the installation method has improved. They actually, and Kara, maybe you recall exactly, but they mount them in on a top of a concrete bed so that they won't settle down just into sand underneath. And it provides that same consistent look. You would not be able to get the same variation in color as you do with the pavers if you did a stamped concrete method versus the pavers themselves. So that's the option we're leaning towards at the moment.
I have a question about this retaining wall. So this retaining wall is the one that's the same that goes east, but is different than the one that's right out here or further down here.
That's correct. So retaining wall standards have evolved over time. This larger block look that we have over on this wall is what you'll more commonly see now in transportation type installations. It has much better longevity and less failure rate. So you'll see cities moving to this type of wall compared to, I don't know why I can't picture. I think we have boulders behind the park.
And there's also, I guess it's a bridge. It's not retaining walls, but the bridge is different, looks different.
Yeah, yep.
So, okay.
Yeah, so, and then we're assuming that we'll maintain the same lighting standard, We're looking at, if that wall goes in, we probably will need a fence on it. So, the fencing will look consistent with what's in the rest of downtown. Really, we make that decision, though, more based on maintenance. So if the planners say it looks good enough, we do like Public Works to weigh in, because, they take a little bit of beating with the snow removal that occurs around them. So over the years, the city has tried different railing systems. So we do tend to look to those guys to see what they're comfortable with in the particular environment. And then these are just some tree species that the consultant would be recommending. Did I miss anything? The residents who attended the open house, generally, I was not able to attend. I was waiting the results of a COVID test, so Marty had to cover for me. So you can speak to any comments they might have had about the streetscape. They did ask lots of questions, as we expected them to, about proposed assessments for the project, and we're just take a look at the city's assessment policy, how that would apply, and start doing some calculations. And then we'll share that information with the property owners and with the city council. You'll end up having to hold a public hearing, and there's a whole lot of steps left with that piece of the puzzle. But
Yeah, Mayor, members of the council, Kara is accurate. Most of the questions and conversations were related to assessments, which, as Kara mentioned, we just don't have that information yet. But I would say that, in general, the property owners did not seem opposed to assessments as long as they are fairly determined as to what that cost would be. But there were no overarching concerns with the layout or the landscaping or those types of things in that meeting.
Good. All right, council, questions, comments? The only thing that I would say is I like how these design elements are carried down into the new development. I think that's really important for continuity between old and new, and I think that's a critical component of it, so it's good. Do you need anything further from us, or is this informational for council only? Terrific.
You're not just saying that because you want to go home, right?
All right, nothing more is needed, so we're going to move on to, there are no more items on our regular agenda, so we'll move on to reports and emerging issues. And as a reminder, since we went through all these items, we are going to cancel our December 28th meeting, so thank you for your endurance in this long meeting, and we'll give you the night off in a couple of weeks. So, Attorney Vos, any reports from you?
Mayor, I don't, thank you.
All right, terrific. Ms. Hardy, how about from staff?
None from staff, Mayor.
Council, it's your turn. Anyone?
I would just like to say, since it's our last meeting, happy holidays to everyone, and thanks for training in, I guess, the newbies, right? So hopefully we've...
You guys got 1 year under your belt now. How about that? That's awesome.
It is awesome.
It's good stuff.
Thank you, staff and Dana, obviously,
Yes.
too, most importantly.
Same here. I did have something, but I'm going to wait until January because I'm not. I still want to fight that traffic speed limit that they are imposing on us. And I did get a letter from a resident thanking me for speaking up. And I did find some information, and I'll share it at the next meeting.
All right, very good. Thank you. Councilmember Gunderson, anything from you?
Who celebrates Festivus? Anybody?
Festivus.
I'm good.
You're good. On that note, Councilmember Hebert. All right, me too. All right, with that, I will take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I will look for a second from there.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.
We did it.